the Wiliams sisters. Never before has a surname rang so synonymously with the sport of tennis. Dominating the game for over 3 decades, winning every title imaginable. Few players will ever achieve the heights of the famed duo. With 14 Grand Slam titles and 3 Olympic gold medals as a doubles team and 30 combined Grand Slam singles titles, winning almost seems like second nature for Serena and Venus. From inexperienced teenagers to seasoned vets, nobody could have predicted the sisters' careers. Or could they?
Welcome to viewers from British Eurosport. It's an amazing sound here. A crescendo of boos for Serena Williams. And there's Father Richard coming down. It's quite amazing. Joe Jury alongside me, Simon Reed. There's Venus. And the crowd, an American crowd, booing an American family. And you have to say that it does smack of a little bit of racism.
Oh, wow, I'm just speechless. I've never heard this before, ever, and I've been on the circuit, or was on the circuit, for quite a long time.
Known as the sport of kings, tennis is rooted in the upper class. From its origins in the 12th century, tennis has become synonymous with wealth and social status. Rod Laver, Pete Sampras, Steffi Graf, and Chris Everett. The game has given us some of the greatest athletes to ever live. However, from the players to the umpires to the fans, there is one thing that stands out.
I think tennis is still perceived as a bit of a posh sport, a bit of a middle-class sport. So that one of the reasons for that is its royal roots, if you like. It started off, as a real tennis and things like that. And it's got a royal connections in that respect. Tennis is a sport that started, history has it started the monks playing in French monasteries in the 12th century, a game called Jeu de Paume, which was they were hitting a ball with the palm of their hands in the cloisters against the wall. Now this developed in the 16th century when they started playing with rackets, and that's when the Royal Association started. Henry V and Henry VIII really loved the sport. There are perceived barriers to it, so it's perceived as a middle-class white sport. So there weren't many role models for the Wiliams sisters to go into. Also, it's an expensive sport, so it can be an expensive sport. You've got to hire courts, you've got to buy rackets, and then once you've started, you reach a level, junior events, you go round, you've got to travel around to play these different events all around the country and then internationally. So there are these barriers that prevented many people entering the sport before them.
This is Hollywood, a fantasy land of glamour and beauty. Its stars are jewels in the golden setting of exquisite homes, monumental studios, and sparkling atmosphere.
Los Angeles means the city of the angels, but down below the glittering lights of Hollywood and Bel Air, the streets are far from angelic. But just a few blocks from the Olympic sites and the tourist hotels, the glamour quickly gives way to the grubby world of gangland. Los Angeles has the worst gang problem in the States, with some 20,000 thugs dedicated to violence.
I mean, going to jail back and forth, I mean, killing, and also watching brothers get killed. I mean, it can take a toll on your life. It can take a toll on your mind. You're just standing right next to a brother and you just see him get his head blown off.
Although only 20 miles from the glamour and glitz of Hollywood, Compton is a world away. The 1980s were difficult times for the city of Compton. Having exceeded the middle-class bliss of the 60s, Compton had become a hardened working-class hub, tarnished by gun violence and drug dealing by criminal gangs.
On Saturday night recently, 5 people died, all of them victims of what they call here drive-by shootings.
To me, it's very shocking to talk to these youngsters, and I'm talking about a 15 or 16-year-old young man that has the ability to go by and just indiscriminately fire a weapon, not really caring if an innocent bystander is struck, and then not feeling any sort of remorse for it.
Growing up in the chaos and poverty that was 1980s Compton, the Wiliams sisters were determined from a young age to not be another statistic. And with encouragement from their father, Richard, the girls chose their path.
I mean, the film, King Richard, the Oscar-winning film, shows a little bit about this history and how he took them, the 2 sisters, onto these tennis courts, public tennis courts in Compton and LA, and coached them and coached them and coached them and turned them into stars. He did it in a different way, so not only that's the traditional country club way of doing it, also during their younger years, he decided they weren't going to play junior events. You know, the events that's the traditional path. You play against contemporaries, people of your age. You learn to play, you learn to win. That he didn't decide his daughters wouldn't do that. He wanted them to have education as well, you know, a formal education. He wanted them to be at home. He wanted them to learn, and then when the time was right, he released them on the tennis world.
I quit that one so long ago, Serena.
Me too.
Here's a question I'm sure you've been asked more than once.
Yes.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
Tennis player. I like to be a tennis player.
If you were a tennis player, who would you want to be like?
Well, I like other people to be like me.
That's a good answer.
From the age of 4, Richard began coaching the girls, spending countless hours on the courts, mapping out a path to stardom. Training in harsh conditions, with used equipment in the heart of gang territory, the girls quickly developed their skills, drawing in crowds to watch them practice on the courts of Compton. By 1992, Venus and Serena were playing on the junior circuit across the country, all under the watchful eye of their protective father.
Richard Wiliams, not only the father to Serena and Venus, he was their original coach, and he was the driving force behind their early successes. So there were barriers to, you know, African Americans, people of color, accessing the sport. He decided that it was an investment, it was a job, and the money could be made out of this. So he decided to train champions, and he took that on himself.
Very confident.
I'm very confident.
You say it so easily. Why?
Because I believe it.
Cut right here, if you don't mind. And let me tell you what she said it with so much confidence the first time. But if you keep going on and on.
Listen, we can't keep interrupting. I mean, if you want...
You got to understand that you're dealing with an image of a 14-year-old child. And this child gonna be out there playing when your old ass and me gonna be in the grave. When she says something, we done told you what's happening. You're dealing with a little black kid, and let her be a kid. She done answered it with a lot of confidence. Leave that alone.
By 1997, Serena and Venus had propelled themselves from the junior circuit to playing professional tennis.
Well, it's interesting because at our level, we still have a lot of things that we want to work on, like basic techniques. And you have to have a strong foundation, I believe, and my parents and my dad taught us that in order to be at a level of a professional tennis, you need to have a really, really strong foundation so it won't break and it won't crack under any type of pressure. So sometimes my dad says, okay, remember when we were young, we used to always have this saying, turn back. And we would always say, yeah, so we would go back to that. So I think that's really important.
Making their mark early, Venus reached 5 quarterfinals, 1 semifinal, and 1 final at Grand Slam tournaments in her first 3 years. Painstakingly close to lifting gold, Venus looks set to achieve her lifetime goal. However, it would be Serena that would get the opportunity first. Defeating world #1 Hingis in the US Open final, Serena captured the first Grand Slam of the sisters' careers.
It is my great pleasure to present to you the 1999 US Open Women's Singles Trophy to Serena Williams.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 1999 U.S. Open Women's Singles Champion, Serena Williams.
Serena's win would make her the first African-American woman to win a Grand Slam since Althea Gibson in 1958. Making her first mark in history.
Althea Gibson of New York became the first of her race to win the title at Wimbledon, England, and she won the U.S. Nationals, too. Sportsmen everywhere applauded Althea's triumph and shared in her moment of glory when Queen Elizabeth herself presented the symbol of victory to the girl from Harlem, who became the toast of the tennis world in 1957.
I think it was a motivation. Because it wasn't, it was expected that, Venus was the elder one and she would achieve more and earlier. And the fact that Serena came through, and it was quite a shock for her to win the 1999 US Open to do that. So, I'm sure it was a motivation to her that if your little sister or little brother does something before you want to go out and do it as well.
It's a family affair that's gripped the nation. One of the Wiliams sisters has to lose today, but which one? It's only happened twice before in Wimbledon history. It's the first time in the semi-finals of a modern Grand Slam event. The experts forecast a close match.
Sometimes when you get two players that are too emotionally high, you can be too emotionally high and maybe just be a little tight. But I think once you get a couple of games out of the way, I think they'll settle into their games, and I think we're going to see some pretty good tennis. I think we're going to see an extremely aggressive tennis match.
The big question tomorrow is how the umpire is going to address the two sisters. First names have been ruled out. The only solution appears to be the full Monty, Miss Venus Williams and Miss Serena Williams. Well, all the excitement over the sisters has rather overshadowed the men's quarterfinals this afternoon.
I don't know, they just have a presence around that no one else seems to have.
For once, though, it was a less than glamorous entrance for Serena and Venus, the brightest stars of the ladies' tournament.
I'm feeling pretty good about today. I'm ready to go home.
Which of these two remarkable women would you put your money on tomorrow?
Well, I picked Venus to win the tournament at the beginning, so I got to stick with her now. I like her serve. I like the fact that she's a little more mature, a little more experienced, but Serena has been playing the better tennis, but she hasn't been playing anybody.
Now, of course, these two are sisters. They're very close. They clearly love each other very much. Will they be able to be aggressive enough on court tomorrow against each other?
Well, they do, but they say that when they're on the court, they're not related. Their previous 4 matches have not been very good to watch because there's a tremendous psychological block in there. You can't deny that. But I think as they play each time, they realize they're professional athletes. They're watching, the world is watching now.
So how is this playing out in America? Has it gone Wimbledon crazy over there?
Very much so. This is a bigger story in the United States than Agassi or Sampras. And if one of them wins the title, woo, well, no black person, no black American has won since Althea Gibson among the women in 1958.
I know when I had to play my brother John, we tried to be friends, but when we got on court, we obviously had to try and win and beat each other. After the match, well, we go and have a drink. If I won, I would buy him a drink and vice versa. So it's going to be tremendously tough for both girls, but I've just got a feeling Venus is going to come through on this one.
Whoever comes through this afternoon's semi-final, the Wiliams family will be the winner. And of course, both Venus and Serena could yet appear in a final together in that ladies' doubles.
I hope that they both could win, but I know that can't happen. To see where we come from out of the worst ghetto, to be here at the finest club in the world, it's just phenomenal. In other words, if I was writing a script for a movie, I would say it'll never happen.
Oh, what can't you love about Wimbledon? The grass, I mean, wearing the white, playing one of the biggest Grand Slam in the world. It's the biggest stadium, and you just got to get up for it.
On the 7th of July 2000, for the first time in the history of the Open era, 2 sisters would face off in a Grand Slam semifinal. From the public courts of Compton to the grandest stage of all, only one of the sisters could make it through to the final.
So Lindsay Davenport will be back on centre court on Saturday to defend her title against Venus Williams. This time, Richard Wiliams says he will be there to cheer his daughter on, and Venus expects younger sister Serena to be rooting for her as well.
I didn't cry, but I was pretty close to it. I sympathize with Serena because Serena hates to lose. And she got to learn that in this sport, you are going to lose sometime.
It must be very difficult. I remember 2000 Wimbledon when they played in the semi-final. And to be honest, it was an awful match. You know, they both looked nervous. They both looked like they didn't want to beat each other. You know, it wasn't a great spectacle. I mean, it was a great occasion, but the quality of the tennis, there were so many errors, etc. out of that. Venus went on to win that and went to win Wimbledon that year. But, you know, it must be difficult, especially, you know, if you leave aside the emotional side of it, they're beating someone you love and shared so much of your life with. It's also the fact that they train and practice together so many years, so they know each other's game inside out. So it's very difficult to surprise each other. So, you know, on so many levels, it was difficult for them.
Serena watched on from the grandstands as Sister Venus went on to win her first Grand Slam title, the 2000 Wimbledon Championship. And unfortunately, it wasn't the last time she'd be watching her sister from there. On the 9th of September 2000, Venus won her second Grand Slam title, the US Open. 10 months later, she would go on to win her third Grand Slam title. However, Serena wouldn't have to wait long for another chance at glory, when the 2 sisters were scheduled to face each other in the Indian Wells semifinal. 4 minutes before the match, Venus pulled out sparking allegations of match fixing and racial abuse towards the sisters and their dad.
Game cluster.
But Serena has been put out. No doubt about it.
Kleister leads 2 games to...
But I don't like it. I don't like the atmosphere at all. I do think it smacks of a certain amount of racism by a certain proportion in the crowd, and that is distasteful.
Serena would go on to say, "I looked up and all I could see was a sea of rich people, mostly older, mostly white." Although she won the match, Serena felt more disconnected from the sport than ever. Richard would later state that, "I think Indian Wells disgraced America." After the controversial Indian Wells tournament, allegations of match fixing continued as people began to question the sisters' other encounters. However, on the 10th of September 2001, the sister had a chance to prove the world wrong when, for the first time in open-era history, two sisters would face each other in a Grand Slam final, the 2002 U.S. Open. Losing out once again to her sister, Serena was determined to make her mark on the tennis world. Facing off against Venus yet again at the 2002 French Open, Serena pulled through to win her first Grand Slam final against her sister. And it wouldn't be the last. Meeting each other yet again at the 2002 Wimbledon final, Serena once again beat her sister in a tightly contested match. At the final Grand Slam of the year, the Australian Open, Serena and Venus met once again in the final. Winning the match, Serena now held 3 out of 4 possible Grand Slams and had the chance to do the unimaginable when she faced her sister once again at the 2003 Australian Open final. Serena prevailed in a tightly contested match, winning by tiebreak to claim 4 out of a possible 4 Grand Slam titles, dubbed the Serena Slam.
So to hold all 4 Grand Slam titles simultaneously shows not only your mastery of all the 3 surfaces in the 4 Grand Slams, it also shows your consistency during this period. You know, it's so easy to have a bad day and an off day and someone else comes out and plays out of this world and beats you. She was able to do that for a consistent period.
The night before, they'd been turning heads at the Wimbledon Champions Ball and were as pleased with their performance there as at the tournament itself.
Serena also, I think Serena enjoys the limelight a little bit more. I think she's more at ease in press conferences. I think she enjoys that side of it slightly more. Where Venus is slightly more guarded, I don't think she enjoys sharing so much.
Red carpets, charity events, and gala dinners all became the norm for tennis's newest stars.
Some people suggest that you've got so many outside interests that tennis has become more of a hobby. How do you react to that?
I think that basically you just have to listen to what Serena and I say. Any other person's suggestion would just be opinion.
They became megastars. They became known outside the sport. What you're always looking for in tennis and all sports is, you know, we talk about a breakthrough trick. So most tennis fans will watch all tennis events, you know, come what may. Now the sports fans who have got a general interest in sport will watch, you know, the Grand Slams, the bigger events, as well as the tennis fan. Now what Serena Williams and Venus Williams did to help transport the sport is to make it the crossover to have an appeal for everyone in society. So everybody wanted to know what they were doing. And Serena's achievement of the Serena Slam in 02-03, winning Wimbledon without dropping a set, I mean, that impact in the UK, that made her into an instant star. The way she did it as well was just a style of tennis which made people step up, look up and think, wow, that is something else. I've never seen anything like that before.
Having established themselves as 2 of the most dominant female tennis players in the world, Serena and Venus transformed the sport. Taking on major brand deals with Nike and Reebok, the sisters have become the biggest names in the world of tennis. finishing the year ranked #1 and 2 in the world.
I think it reflects the consistency of your performances as well. So, I mean, the Grand Slam, you go down in history for winning Grand Slams, your name will always be there. But if you're a #1, get to become world #1, and certainly at the end of the year, to say you were the best player in that year, you need to to get to world #1, you need to perform on all the surfaces. You can't just be a clay court specialist, you can't just be a grass court specialist. You've got to perform all around the world, all through the year. So that's why people value that honor.
The sisters were now 2 of the biggest names in tennis. By the end of 2003, Serena had claimed 6 Grand Slam titles compared to Venus's 4, dominating the sport with an unstoppable serve like nothing the tennis world had seen before.
I don't think anyone dispute she has the biggest serve in the history of the women's sport, and also, has dominated it during certain periods like no other player. So she has been, when she's been fit and mentally tuned in and able to, she is undoubtedly the best player in the world.
Shortly after winning her 2nd Wimbledon title, Serena suffered a partial tear of her quadriceps tendon in her left knee, requiring surgery. At the same time, Venus suffered an abdominal injury requiring her to step away from the game. At the heartbreak of the U.S. fans, neither Venus nor Serena competed in the 2003 U.S. Open.
Yeah, the U.S. Open's the last event of the year in August, September. It's in New York City. It's also the noisiest one. That, for me, of the US Open is the buzz of the crowd. So there's this thing at Wimbledon where they say, quiet, please, before play. They like to perfect silence. It doesn't happen in New York. So there's the biggest tennis arena in the world, the Arthur Ashe Arena. It's like 24,000 people. And the noise during a match is just like nothing else. So there's that constant hum and the street, the vendors, the hot dog sellers, all that. That's the smells, everything. It's just like nothing else for me. And the crowd get into it as well. And the crowd can give players a hard time or get behind the Americans or something. The crowd atmosphere is very special at the US Open.
Justine Henin went on to claim her first US Open title as the sisters struggled to return to winning form.
They have been unlucky, and I think they would have won an awful lot more if they hadn't suffered these injuries. They've kept going. I mean, that's the big thing about this Wiliams sisters had. They've had various chances during their career to say, I've had a great career, thanks very much, I'm going to leave it now. But they've had this, inner drive, inner belief to keep coming back. I think that differentiates the great sports people that go on and win again and again, and have the motivation to do that and overcome obstacles like that. I think that's one of the defining things about their careers.
We definitely will miss tennis one day, but not anytime soon, because Venus and I were like, okay, we're going to keep playing. We've had a lot of time off in our careers, so maybe we can just keep going and keep doing some more.
On the 14th of September 2003, the sisters were forced to deal with a different type of loss. The loss of their half-sister, Yetunde Price. While Serena and Venus had been conquering the tennis world, Yetunde had stayed in Compton, finding success as a nurse, opening her own business, and working as a part-time assistant to Venus and Serena. However, on the night of the 14th of September 2003, in a case of mistaken identity, Yetunde was shot while in the passenger seat of her car. The Wiliams family had fallen victim to the exact environment they had escaped over 10 years previous.
On Saturday night recently, 5 people died, all of them victims of what they call here drive-by shootings.
To me, it's very shocking to talk to these youngsters, and I'm talking about a 15 or 16-year-old young man that has the ability to go by and just indiscriminately fire a weapon, not really caring if an innocent bystander is struck, and then not feeling any sort of remorse for it.
The death had a profound effect on Venus and Serena, who were already struggling to get back to winning form. With Serena stating that she was a wonderful person. We're dealing with it however we can. Some days are better than others. And in 2016, the Wiliams sister opened a community center in Compton for victims of violence in their families called the Yetunde Price Resource Center. Yetunde's murder would have a prolonged effect throughout the sisters' careers, often acting as inspiration and motivation to succeed.
They were a very close family, so it was raised, they're coached by Richard, the father. The two of them became the two big stars, but the other sisters as well, and they work for them as, as PA, etc. So the impact the death had on the family was quite great. And I think Serena dedicated her victory afterwards. She dedicated to her dead sister.
And most of all, I would like to dedicate this win to my sister, who's not here. Her name is Yetunde, and I just love her so much. I'll try not to get teary-eyed, but a couple days ago I said, if I win this, it's gonna be for her, so thanks, Yetunde.
Spurred on by her sister's death, Serena won her first Grand Slam title in 2 years, as well as completing a near-impossible feat, winning the tournament as an unseeded player.
If you're unseeded, you can play anybody at the beginning of the event, so you can draw the #1 seed in the first round. Now, if you're seeded in an event, the top 32 are seeded. The idea is you get an easier introduction into it. So your first 2 rounds, you will draw an unseeded player. By definition, they're not ranked as high, so it should be easy, and you'll ease your way into the tournament. So being unranked is very rare, and the times it's happened, when Serena did it, when was that, 2007 Australia, was it? That's when she did it, and she was ranked number 81 at the time. They're memorable. You can identify when it's happened because it's so rare.
Serena had the chance to build on her success when she faced Daniela Hantuchova at the 2007 Wimbledon tournament, a match that would go on to epitomize her career.
The green grass at Wimbledon is a different look from the hard courts and the clay as well. Certainly British society and British sport, it has a very special place as well. So tennis is a popular sport in the UK. I wouldn't pretend it's the most popular sport, but for those 2 weeks, and especially when there's not a big football tournament on, it's the biggest sporting event in the country, arguably the world. And it's also become, Wimbledon is a sexy sport. People want to go along and see it, and so the Royal Box is full of other sports stars, actors, film stars, etc. like that. People want to go to the tennis and want to be seen at the tennis.
Serena's starting to cramp here.
She is. Serena's cramping.
Left calf.
30-50.
And that, we are, from our location, very close to that, and it's visual, very visible that her left calf was up in a ball. I must admit, I'm starting to wonder if this is more than a cramp. And that's an awful shriek that what certainly looked to be, and there was a visible knot and ball in the back of her calf, may have been something more than a cramp.
I think about individual sports generally, there's no hiding place. Now, the individual sports, if you are, it's down to you what you do. If you can play in a rugby team or a football team, you can have a bad day, you can play badly, and you can still win. Everyone else can carry you. But when you're out there on a tennis court playing, it's one-on-one, man-on-man, there's no hiding place. It's what you do on the day, and if you don't perform, you lose. And that's your job, it's your career, all the pressure's on you, and all the responsibility is yours.
I cannot imagine Serena Williams coming back from this.
After a short rain break, an injured Serena returned back onto the court, bandaged and limping, determined to see the game through.
Just refused to give in. So that any normal person wouldn't have been able to continue in that match. The injury she was suffering. But she She got a little bit lucky with the rain break, etc. as well. So, but she managed to get herself strapped up and go out again, and then come back out and win that match, defying sort of medical science, if you like. So that, I think that kind of performance showed how different she was, how special she was. I mean, the extent of her injury was she lost in the next round, just basically she wasn't fit. So how she managed to get through that match against Andrikova, given the injuries, is sheer adrenaline and sheer will to win.
Although Serena's injuries prevented her from yet another Grand Slam title, sister Venus prevailed to claim her 4th Wimbledon title and 6th Grand Slam overall, setting the sisters up for one of the greatest periods in their careers. Between 2008 and 2010, Serena and Venus dominated world tennis. Between them, they took home 6 out of a possible 12 Grand Slam titles. This meant that for 3 years, half of all Grand Slam tournaments were won by a Wiliams, making them 2 of the most decorated players on the WTA circuit. The Wiliams sisters were back. Not only were the sisters at the height of their careers, they were also changing the very fabric of the sport.
I think that Serena Williams has dominated women's tennis ever since her first Grand Slam win at the 1999 US Open, along with her sister. You know, there's nobody to compare with her and her sister. And there's still the person that everyone wants to see, everybody wants to know their result. I always make the comparison with Tiger Woods and his impact on golf, and similar unusual backgrounds, in fact that we're not used to having an African-American dominate that sport. And so they changed the way that it became sexy, it became more than just, golf and tennis have got these perceptions of being quite stuffy, middle-class white sport. Though Tiger Woods for golf and the Williams sisters in tennis have changed that and changed it for the better. I would say, I mean, basically they're similar, and they've achieved, similar. Serena's taken it to a different level, though. Serena's always been a more explosive player and able to play at I think Serena's best play, what she's been able to achieve, has eclipsed Venus. I mean, it's strange to say that, Venus Williams, for all that amazing achievements she's achieved, she's not even the best tennis player in her family.
By the end of 2010, Serena had begun to establish herself as the dominant sister with 13 Grand Slam titles under her belt, compared to Venus's 7. Now at the height of their careers, nothing would prepare the sisters for what was to come next.
Serena didn't even know if she'd ever play tennis again. She severed a tendon in her foot stepping on a piece of broken glass in a restaurant celebrating last year's Wimbledon win, and then had emergency surgery to remove blood clots from her lungs just before heading out to an Oscars party.
Yeah, I definitely dodged a bullet. I mean, literally. I definitely view tennis maybe a little different. I mean, I view okay, I just want to be healthy, and nothing can keep one healthy. No titles, no money, nothing.
Well, Serena's career was known for its highs and also its lows, usually through injuries. So she had lots of injuries during the year. She also admitted suffering with depression after a knee injury early in her career. So it was always, she never knew what to expect. There was always a roller coaster ride through her career.
Suffering from yet another injury, Serena was forced to miss the first half of the 2011 season. Absent from the Australian and French Opens, Serena saw her rankings plummet. By the first week in May 2011, Serena was ranked 175th in the world, her lowest ranking since 1997.
Yeah, well, Venus, she was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease in 2011. So this had a huge impact on not just her career, but her life. So she had to adopt a vegan diet, control her calories, etc. She was fatigued, everything. So really, she had to evaluate, how she had to rebuild her game and sort of adapt her training and her calendar to do this. So, on various levels, it's really interesting. It just goes to show that even with a condition like this, you can still be a successful sportsman if you're careful and get the right sports science. It also showed her incredible drive to keep continuing to play, because it would have been very easy. She'd already won, countless Grand Slams. She'd already achieved anything, a career that most players, the envy of most players. But she decided, no, I'm not going to stop here. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to learn how to cope with this. I'm going to adapt to it. I'm going to come back again.
With both Serena and Venus absent from the game, questions were beginning to be asked about the state of women's tennis.
Just in case it escaped your notice, every single one of the women's quarterfinalists at Wimbledon this year were European, most of them Eastern European. And with the Wiliams sisters gone as well, what does it say about the state of women's tennis?
But is it similar on the men's side? There was always a new generation of players threatening to come through to replace them. The constant talking point during the 2010s was, when's the changing of the guard going to happen? When are these new guys going to come through and start dominating the sport like the old guard have done?
As young new talent began to break through, Serena was determined to prove she was still the greatest player in world tennis.
Now, 2015 was one of the highs again when she established herself as the best player in the world. So this, the longevity of Williams' career is shown that she first completed the Serena Slam, which is holding all 4 Grand Slam singles titles simultaneously, 2002, 2003. She won Wimbledon for the first time, was the dominant force. She did it again, 14 years later. 2014, 2015, she did it again.
By the end of 2015, Serena has cemented her position as the #1 player in the world.
So you could argue that her game in that period, in 14 and 15, was the best she ever had. So when she was in 02, 03, she had the youth, she had the athleticism, explosiveness. 2014, 15, she also had game plan. She knew what she was doing. She had the experience to do it, and she was, she blew away everyone else.
Next year, something I definitely want to continue to do is just really focus on breaking records in the slam.
Having completed her second Serena Slam, Serena had the chance to make history and complete a calendar year Grand Slam when she reached the 2015 US Open final. Losing in a shock defeat to Roberta Vinci, Serena would go on to lose another 2 consecutive Grand Slam finals, the Australian and French Opens. However, she didn't have to wait long to achieve her goals, when on the 9th of July, 2016, Serena claimed her 22nd Grand Slam at Wimbledon, equaling Steffi Graf's Open-era record for Grand Slam titles in weeks at #1. On the 28th of January 2017, the tennis world was treated to a match they had longed for, when the sisters were scheduled to face each other in the Australian Open final.
Well, 27 Australian Open is known as the Golden Oldie Grand Slam, because on the men's side you had Roger Federer and Rafa Nadal reaching the final. On the women's side you had Serena and Venus reaching the final. It was like the throwback Grand Slam. It was like a time warp going back 10 or 15 years. It was the first time that they'd met the sisters had met in a Grand Slam final since 2009 Wimbledon, and they renewed their rivalry again. I don't think many people expected to see them back again, so for various reasons.
Championship point for Serena Williams. And Serena smashes Steffi's record. It's number 23, an iconic number. And like Michael Jordan, she's in rare air. The sisters embrace. They share a moment. What a special moment. A moment we might not see again in history.
Having won the Australian Open final, Serena was now the most successful female tennis player in Open-era history. Boasting an impressive 23 Grand Slam titles, etching her name into the history books. Her success between 2015 and 2017 was unlike any player in history, reaching 7 Grand Slam finals and 2 Grand Slam semifinals, claiming 5 out of a possible 9 titles.
Everybody wants to be the greatest of all time. So you're known as the GOAT, and the most objective way of defining who is the best player is the number of Grand Slam titles. So everyone can have an opinion on who's their favourite player, who's your favourite backhand, who's the funniest person, whatever like that. If you want to get down to the cold hard facts, it's how many Grand Slam titles you've won. So Chris Evert and Martina Navratilova both won 18. They ended up their careers on the same level. Steffi Graf, came past them and won 22 in the Open era. So for Serena to overtake those 3 was a hugely significant event, in the context of what the history of Open tennis.
Serena's success made her the highest paid women's athlete of all time, cementing her name as the greatest female tennis player to ever live.
The 2017 Australian Open on the women's side it showed that Serena and Venus were still the 2 players to beat. It was also sort of like a full stop, if you like, because it was the high point, and it was very emotional. It was great fun for everybody to watch that. It was the last Grand Slam final Venus got to, and it was also the last Grand Slam title that Serena won. So it came out after the event. She was actually 8 weeks pregnant with her first child. So she gave birth later that year, and she came back and she got through to 4 Grand Slam finals and never won one of them. So the 2017 Australian Open final, on the tournament generally, is just remarkable.
Having given birth shortly after the 2017 Australian Open, Serena took time away from the game, returning 8 months later, after a number of pregnancy-related health issues.
Serena, so good to see you back here. Can you explain how hard it's been to get back in shape after having Alexis, what it's like to have her here as well?
It's amazing. It was definitely hard, but it's also so fulfilling, and it's like just goals after goals after goals, and just amazing. I just feel like life is just better now. Even though I've had so much success in my life, I just feel like it's just better now.
Having made her way back to professional tennis, the tennis world would be given one of the most heartwarming matches in the history of the sport, when on the 13th of March, 2018, the sisters would return to the infamous Indian Wells to face each other after 17 years.
"17 years on in the same arena where these 2 legends of the game were scheduled to meet. Tonight they come together again. This time it is safe to say the atmosphere is one of love, joy and positivity for 2 sisters who have transcended a sport, Venus and Serena Williams.
Their return to Indian Wells reflected the admiration they had built up over the course of their careers. The 2 young teens who were once booed out of the arena were now welcomed with standing ovations and applause.
Venus and Serena Williams are 2 American tennis players who have changed the face of tennis during their career. They're African-American players who have dominated the sport over the last 20 years and made tennis, change it in the way that the physicality of the sport and the access to the sport, and become 2 of the greatest players of all time.
With careers spanning over 3 decades, winning a combined 30 Grand Slam titles, it's hard to say if any players will ever come close to the success and longevity of the Wiliams sisters.
So Pete Sampras retired when he was 32, and that at the time was seen as quite normal. 32, 33, early 30s, that's your career done. We've now got Serena Williams and Roger Federer. They played into their 40s, which is just remarkable.
After 27 years of tennis, in September 2022, to the heartbreak of tennis fans all over the world, Serena Williams announced her retirement from the sport.
It's always difficult to decide for these top sports people when to say goodbye and choosing the right moment. There's also, you know, you want to go out, you're still enjoying the sport, but you don't want to be losing every week and sort of, tainting your legacy is probably too strong, but you want to be remembered as a great player. So there's always this balancing act, was playing as long as you still enjoy it and you still feel you can achieve something, and retiring before you still lose some of your great powers. So I don't think it's going to be long for Venus either.
I think the time to retire is when you're just going backwards and the level of the game is you can't maintain it or you can't improve, or when you've had enough. So I'm at neither of those points yet. And
I don't think we'll ever see their story again. So it's not just the fact that they've dominated, tennis for over a couple of decades, and not only the way they've performed on the court, it's the social impact of it. They've changed the sport, they've changed the perception of the sport. They have become role models for the African American community, people of color in the United States and around the world. And they've also developed and used their platform to speak on political issues. And now Serena, has got an investment company. She invests in different companies. She's one of the investors in the LA women's football team. She wants to empower other women in the future. So I think they've had an impact beyond tennis in society in a positive way.
As the sisters' careers come to an end, the legacy left behind is undoubted. Two icons in the world of tennis, an unrivaled story which we are unlikely to ever see again.